I wish I could speak in Telugu, but our school system, our education system does not enable us to learn the languages of other regions, which I think is a big disgrace. I see no reason why people in North can't be taught Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, and people in the South can't learn Marathi, Gujarati, Punjabi, and Hindi. This way of becoming monolingual in a country which is so full of rich languages, some of the greatest languages of the world, ancient languages of the world are from our land. I'm hoping in the next few years I will work on this language issue and show the government that it's very easy to teach 5, 6, 7, 8 languages to children through music, for example. And then it won't be such a problem. Will somebody ensure that it shows up? Okay, I've been asked by the organizers to talk about my involvement, my own journey with women's issues in the last 40 years. I think I'm one of those few who has had a consistent history and track record from age 17. I think my involvement with women's issues started when I entered Miranda House as a young student. And I found that what I thought would be a premier institution for higher education for girls, guess what was the most important yearly function in Miranda House? Can anybody guess? Sorry? Beauty contest. Miss Miranda Beauty contest. और हम आए थे बहुत सीरियसली स्टारी आइड ये सोच के कि पढ़ेंगे सीरियसली एकेडमिक इंस्टीट्यूशन में जा रहे हैं दिस इज एन इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ हायर एजुकेशन आई ऑनेस्टली वॉज क्वाइट अपसेट एंड शॉक्ड दैट students were introduced to the college through a beauty contest and fashion parade. Yes? So, when I became the president of Miranda House Union, the first thing I did was, we organized a vote, a referendum, to ask students whether the title of Miss Miranda should go to the most cutie girl of the college, or it should go to the best all-round student. What do you think? All-round student. Why should a college an institution of higher learning be promoting beauty contests? So from there to trying to get active in those days, women students were not expected to take part in student union politics. I'm talking about early 1970s. I'm quite old. So it's from my student days that I've been engaged trying to make a place for women in a domain that is normally considered a male monopoly. Is it going to happen or not? Hello? No? I have to do without it? Okay, let's see. आ गया तो आ गया. I'll show you the PowerPoint, otherwise I'll just keep talking. Yeah?
I have to restart this.
Okay, then do what you will. In the meantime, I'll talk. Now, a lot of things happened between my student days in Miranda House, and then I became a young lecturer in Delhi University. And it was as a young lecturer in Delhi University that I started Manushi, which the first issue, it was started as a journal. Most people know Manushi only as a magazine, and we called it a journal about women and society. Now, the first issue of the journal, Manushi, was published in January 1979. It's nearly, 40 years, 39 years ago that we started Manushi. And when we started it, it was not like the usual women's magazines. We made certain promises to ourselves. So I was explaining that the January 79 release of Manushi magazine, it was not like Femina, Eve's Weekly or the general women type magazines. It was meant to inform us, make us concerned citizens. It was not about beauty tips, house care tips, cookery, recipes, none of the things that women's magazines do. It was meant to be a platform for trying to understand through personal research, investigations, the problems of women in different parts of the country. One of the important things Manushi told itself, we told ourselves, that we sitting in Delhi cannot take it for granted that we know the problems of women in Andhra, we know the problems of women living in Kerala, the fisherwomen of Kerala, or the landless poor of Andhra Pradesh, or women in Rajasthan, that we will have to actually take the trouble to understand through proper research investigations and hear the voices of women, what they want, instead of us telling women what they should want. The other thing that's important about Manushi is the following. We decided the magazine will be a reader-supported magazine. So, the promise we made ourselves that Manushi would not take a Zanana Dabba approach to women's issues or ladies' compartment approach. And what do I mean by ladies' compartment approach? What I mean is that there is a general tendency to think that women should be concerned only about women-specific issues, rape, abortion, dowry, marriage laws, full stop. Baki, economic policy, defense policy, finance policy, education, everything else should be handled by men, and women will only open their mouth when it comes to marriage law, rape law, abortion or dowry. This is what I call the Zanana Dabba approach to women's issues. And we decided that we will make sure that we take as much interest in the national affairs, try to understand that politics as well as we can. Secondly, Manushi was not to accept either advertisements. You know, one of the reasons most magazines and even TV channels start publishing nonsense or flimsy things. Most magazines will focus on film stars, cricket stars, and politicians. These three things. You don't hear about the lives of ordinary people in our newspapers or in our magazines. Why don't you give me the computer? Forget that. We won't have that. That we would address ourselves to common citizens and their voices. It was not going to be about politicians, not going to be about film stars, not going to be about cricket stars. It would be about the lives of ordinary people and what they need and what they think needs to be done, with special focus on women. The other thing we decided is we will not accept not only no government ads, we will not remain dependent on the government for advertisements, because that's when people become start following blindly and being manipulated by the party in power. And certainly we will never take foreign funding. I'm sure all of you are aware कि पिछले 25-30 सालों में 35 साल में हमारे जितने भी NGO बने हैं, almost all of them have taken to taking money from foundations abroad, koi America, Europe, Germany, Finland, Sweden, and they follow then what they practice is what I call imported feminism, and the activism is export quality, which is to say they have to report to their funders. So we said no foreign funding, no government funding, No commercial advertisements. This is one of the few magazines in the country which was totally reader supported. And we wanted it to be reader supported so that we remain independent. And we started with 800 rupees from our own pockets. The other thing is that none of us earned our living from Manushi. Even though Manushi didn't remain a journal, it also became a very activist platform. And I'll explain to you the process through which it happened. When the first issue of Manushi came out in January 1979, at that time, in North India at least, every day on the third page, there would be news items of a woman died in kitchen accident, stove burst hua, or a young bride burned to death. These kind of reports were coming every day. And we took the trouble to investigate. You know, the question that came to our mind was this: how is it, जहाँ घर में गैस है, वहाँ पे भी स्टोव बर्स्ट होता है, और स्टोव बर्स्ट होता है तो सिर्फ डॉटर इन लॉ के ऊपर होता है, कभी और किसी के ऊपर नहीं होता. And when we investigated those kitchen accidents, or they would say a young bride committed suicide by pouring kerosene on herself and burnt herself to death. So bride burning had become a very common occurrence. And when we investigated many of those bride burning cases, we found that they were actually neither kitchen accidents nor were they suicides. They were actually wife murder cases. They were wife murder cases. So in that case, then we felt we could not just stop at publishing reports. Can you please bring me the computer for me? Just keep it here. I need to read a couple of things. So we decided we can't just publish reports. We also began to organize demonstrations outside the homes of those families where these young women had been burnt to death, because we felt that the police had been bribed. So we would also protest outside the police stations, and we would call for the social boycott of all such families where women had been burned to death. Now, in those days, interestingly, the police always put these cases either as accidents. When we started protesting, then it became common to say that these were dowry murders. So a new kind of crime started showing up in police records, namely dowry murders. Now, in most these cases of wife burning, it was made out as if the death was, or the woman was burnt to death. So these were some of the early demonstrations we organized outside police station, outside the homes of those families where such murders had taken place. And since everybody called them deaths due to dowry, I personally felt that if dowry is such a bad thing, then we should boycott dowry weddings. And I used to get very upset at the fact that my friends, my feminist friends, who would in the morning come with us to protest like that outside police station or out in neighborhoods, but in the evening or very next day, they would be attending weddings of their own relatives where dowry was being given and taken. So I felt we could not and we should not be showing such double standards, that if we think dowry is bad, we must start with banning dowry or boycotting dowry weddings. So that's what I gave a call in 1979 itself, saying if dowry is indeed the reason why women are getting burnt, then let us not attend dowry weddings even of our relatives and tell them to have dowry-less weddings. And I was very surprised and disappointed to find that all those who shouted big slogans against dowry, दहेज मत लो, दहेज मत दो, दहेज वालों का बहिष्कार करो. But in their own family, they were not willing to implement it. And I must say, for 13 long years, I didn't attend a single wedding except that of my two brothers. They were the only ones who listened to me, my family, and they had totally zero dowry weddings, but nobody else listened. And because nobody else listened, normally when nobody listens to you, one tends to think, "Arey, they are bad people. They are hypocritical." But I felt that if young women are not willing to listen to me, if my own cousins and my own feminist friends don't want dowry-less weddings, they also take dowry in their weddings, then I must find out what's wrong with my saying, be next, please, next and next. Where are we? Yeah, next. And what did I find out? What I found out was, number one, the complaint of women was, that we are not going to get property rights anyway. Property will be given to sons. So if we don't even take dowry, what is the gain for us? हमें क्या फ़ायदा मिला? उनको डबल शेयर हो गया बेटों को, हमें तो कुछ भी नहीं मिलेगा. So why are you asking us not to take whatever little our parents are willing to give us at marriage time? So that made me understand that the issue was not no dowry. Dowry takes place only where daughters don't get equal share in property rights. So then I changed my slogan from boycott dowry weddings to saying give inheritance rights to daughters. That should be the issue. Dowry is not the issue. Issue is absence of property rights, equal property rights to daughters, because they are sent as dependents to the husband's house. If they are facing violence and their parents tell the daughters, don't come back to us, तुम्हारा मरना, तुम्हारा जीना पति के घर, you shouldn't come back alive. That's what many parents used to tell, and that is why daughters were getting murdered. Because when I talked to many victims of domestic violence, those who stayed or who said they can't walk out on bad marriages, the main reason they gave was, we can't go back because वो घर अब भाइयों का भाभियों का है. That house doesn't belong, our parents' house doesn't belong to us anymore. So then I felt the issue should be property rights, not banning dowry, but giving women in the form of property rights. At the same time, in 1981, next please, I was invited to tribal areas of what was then South Bihar. It became Jharkhand later on, where some movement for forest rights was going on. And in that movement, there were a lot of clashes between tribals and police, and I was invited by activists there, NGOs there, to come and write a report on the movement. As I moved from village to village, of course, I got to know about the forest rights movement, but other things came to my notice, which is that a lot of women in tribal areas were facing violence. They were being called witches. Lot of witch killings in tribal areas were actually land grab moves, which is to say, if a woman was widowed without sons, if a woman didn't marry and she didn't have brothers, then the male relatives would try to grab hold of the land under the woman's, because women didn't have full rights to parental land or even to husband's land. They could exercise rights only through husband or father or through sons. This despite the fact that in tribal areas, 95% of work on land is done by women, and yet they didn't have land rights. And these two women, Maki Bui and Sona Muni, from Lonjo village were facing murderous violence by their relatives who wanted to throw them out of the village or kill them, and they had started calling them Dayan in order so that they could justify the murder. So, when they asked me for help, I took a petition to the Supreme Court challenging all the laws that denied women equal inheritance rights, especially land rights. Do you know that even today, land ceiling laws do not have a share for daughter? Land ceiling laws have share only for sons. So we brought this case to the Supreme Court. The case kept dragging on, and the two women under very suspicious circumstances were first driven out of the village. They were pushed out, and then both of them died under mysterious circumstances. I kept fighting in the court, and I would tell the court, Supreme Court judges, saying, look, their lives are in danger, please do something. And the Supreme Court judges would say, what can we do, Madhu? We pass orders, but even the police, officers in the district don't listen to us. Even the Talati doesn't listen to us. SHO doesn't obey our orders. So why don't you bring them to Delhi? Now, that is obviously not a solution. How many women who are facing land right battles can I bring them to my house? So in the meantime, I realized that courts alone, next please, are not the best answer. And while we were fighting this battle in the court, which actually didn't go waste, because when I took this PIL, the denial of land rights, which most people didn't even know about. Most people thought women have been given equal rights because Hindu Marriage Act, Hindu Code Bill had given. Most people didn't know that women didn't have proper rights, especially to land at that time. So it became a big debating point, and that debate triggered a lot of changes, and finally in 2005, the Hindu Succession Act was amended. It actually was first amended in Andhra during NTR regime. I think NTR was the first politician to realize. And that is because in the Kamma community to which he belonged, women have always been given land. It's the Reddys that will not give land. It's many other communities that don't give land. And he understood the value and importance of giving. The first politician who amended the law, finally in 2005, All India legislation, Hindu Succession Act was also amended, but still many daughters don't claim that. Now, in the meantime, in 1980s, around 1986, there was this big farmers' movement led by Sharad Joshi in Maharashtra. It was one of the largest and the most powerful mobilization of farmers in India at that time. And the farmer leader, Sharad Joshi, who had left his United Nations job to come and work among farmers, invited me and Manushi to come and work with Shetkari Sangatna, the farmers' organization, saying that farmer women are coming with us in lakhs. They come to all our protest demonstrations. They sit on dharnas. They are very militant, fighting for the rights the rights of farmers, that farmers should get fair price for their crops, but they don't talk about their problems. So why don't you come and work on women's rights issues among farmers? So I worked for about 8-10 years with Shetkari Sangatna, and one of the major changes that my engagement with Shetkari Sangatna brought about was this. I convinced Sharad Joshi ji, sadly he is no more, he died a couple of years ago, that instead of us waiting for laws, because you can have the best of laws, but if women dare not claim property rights, because most women don't claim inheritance rights, saying, my father and my brothers will break off relations with me, right? Am I right? Isn't that why most women, right away at the time of marriage, they'll say, we will never claim, I disown all my rights, I give up all my rights. And that's how emotional pressure is used by parents to deprive their daughters of property rights. So I convinced Sharad Joshi that we should not just wait for laws to change, because even if laws come, they may not necessarily be implemented. And he agreed to launch a very, very unique and a very creative campaign called Lakshmi Mukti campaign, whose message to the farmers was, and because he was worshipped like a god in those days, so his weight carried a lot of importance in the lives of farmers. His words carried a lot of weight. So his message to the farmers was that you want fair price for your mehnat, for your labor. That is what our demand from the government is. Give us fair price for our crops. Do you give the same justice to your wife, to the women of your family? Do they get anything out of it? They work on the land, but what do they get? Maybe a sari or two in a whole year. They don't get cash income. When a farmer sells his crop, then the cash goes in the hand of the man. If he decides to give it to the woman, fine. So the Lakshmi Mukti campaign carried the message that any village in which 100 or more families will voluntarily transfer a piece of land in the name of the woman of the household would be granted that kind of Praman Patra, Lakshmi Mukti Praman Patra, which is to say the Lakshmi of this house. You know, we normally say, Grahani hai, ghar ki Lakshmi hai, par ghar ki Lakshmi to dependent hai. That was the message. How can you keep your Lakshmi economically dependent, enslaved? Liberate them by giving them property rights. And what was so good is what the Supreme Court could not give to two tribal women. It could not change the mindset or even the law. I mean, it gave an order 15 years later, but that order did no good. But during Lakshmi Mukti campaign, hundreds and hundreds of villages voluntarily not only gave property rights, land rights to women, but celebrated it also. The occasion would be celebrated with, lot of pomp. जैसे दिवाली में सजता है गाँव, उससे भी ज़्यादा बैंड बाजा के साथ. And men took the initiative. They would dance, they would happily sing, and they celebrated the giving of land rights. Now, to my mind, that is the way we need to get rights. There's no point getting rights if in the process घर में झगड़े और सर फूटने लग जाएं. Your rights become meaningful when everybody celebrates them. And that's the atmosphere we have to create. Next, please. However, in the meantime, while we were fighting, this is the story of one big area of Manushi's work has also been, riot reports. 1984 riots, Mumbai riots, Meerut Malyana riots. Then, of course, I did a whole book on Gujarat riots. And I urge you to read my book, Modi Muslims and Media. What you will find is that the mainstream media, our newspapers and TV channels mislead a lot. All my riot reports, very detailed reports, are through the women's eyes. And unlike Teesta Setalwad's reports, जहाँ वो कुकअप करती है टेस्टिमनी, इतना झूठ बोलते हैं, एफिडेविट झूठे लिखवाते. I have always recorded every word so that not one word is exaggerated, and all of them show how most of these riots are politically engineered and how total misinformation coming to Gujarat riots. उसमें तो इतना झूठ बोला हमारे then government, UPA government, and Teesta Setalwad and the gang, the leftist gang. how they misrepresented, and I've done a lot of work on that. But coming back to the women's issues, please next. Now, I was telling you how we started off by trying to change laws. But in the meantime, by mid-80s, all the women's organizations had turned themselves into foreign-funded NGOs. And they started then pushing for, when you have a foreign organization, a powerful Ford Foundation, or other these kind of foreign agencies behind you, not only you get big money, but you also have international networks. So all the laws that have been passed in the last 30 years or so are actually at the behest of foreign-funded activists. I began to get very concerned about the fact. Are you following me? Yes? Okay. Now this is the important part. You can see this cartoon. This is also on the cover of one of my books. The title of my book, this cartoon is called Zealous Reformers, Deadly Laws. I, who had started off by going to Supreme Court, wanting change in this and that law, in the last 30 years, my job has changed to saying the kind of laws that we are passing are actually so harmful, not just causing harm for women, but tearing asunder whole society. And I will give you example of some of these laws and why I'm dead against the kind of laws that we have enacted in the last few years. Now, during British rule, one thing one must say, the British, if they wanted to pass a new law, वो कम से कम नाटक करते थे local communities से बातचीत करने का. They would at least try to make a pretense of consultation. But the kind of laws that our feminist sisters have forced on us, I don't know how many of you follow laws carefully, but since I do a lot of legal aid work, I am very familiar with how laws actually work on the ground. So, in last few years, how many of you have read the anti-dowry law? One or two, okay. That's it, right? Not many. How many of you have read the Domestic Violence Act? 1, 2, 3. Padha hai? Badhiya hai? Happy with it? Oh, you would know. Of course. No, I'm not asking lawyers. I'm asking people who are not lawyers. How many of you have read the rape law? You, ma'am, what is the point? You know more than me. But you would agree with me there are problems, no? Yeah, let's go over the problems. Next. See, what is happening in our society is this. Whenever a law fails, instead of asking, why the law, what's wrong with the law, we say, what's wrong with the people? And then we say, oh, it's because Indians are hypocrites, we have double standards, we are a lawless society, people don't fear laws, so let's make them strict. Frighten people. And that's why that cartoon shows Danda. People are frightened of the law we are passing. Properly speaking, law should make you feel safe. But today, the opposite is happening. People are frightened of laws, especially when they come in touch with them. Now, first is, normally, what the law says and what is actually happening on the ground, there is no relationship. Has dowry gone? No. But we have a very stringent law, and I'll show you how stupid that law is. So, when the law fails, instead of examining the flaws in the law, we try to make it more stringent. So, if it's 5-year punishment, we say make it 15. 15 doesn't work, make it life sentence. Life sentence doesn't work, we say death sentence. Abhi death sentence ke baad, फिर क्या? 3 आगे वाली generations को भी फांसी दे दें क्या? क्या करें? But we don't learn. We keep on making laws draconian and laws become lawless. Next. Now, As a result, most of our laws are easy to abuse and misuse because they are so poorly drafted and so poorly crafted. Now, just look at the Dowry Prohibition Act. In 1961, it was passed in the first instance, but nobody paid heed to it. And so, when all these reports of wife murder started coming, people said, make dowry law more stringent and then wife murder will stop. And I asked them even at that time, does wife murder take place only in India? No. If you look at the rate of wife murder or girlfriend murder in Europe and America, per 100,000 population, it's much higher. So, if dowry is the only reason, why are American men or British men or French men murdering their wives or their spouses? Why are they beating them? At least we can say, हमारे हिंदुस्तानी मर्द बड़े अक्लमंद हैं, मारते हैं तो कुछ पैसा लेने के लिए, कोई तो अकल है. वो पागल क्यों मारते हैं? उनको तो कुछ मिलना भी नहीं है. हाँ? So clearly, domestic violence is a very universal problem. In most societies it exists. It exists even where there is no dowry and you are not going to get any reward for beating up your wife. So that in itself should have warned. In any case, when I listen to stories of domestic violence from all the women that I used to meet, I understood the problem is very different. But in 1984, in 84 and 86, amendments to the Dowry Prohibition Act made it very strict, and it said that police are duty bound. Earlier, if a woman went to police station saying, I'm getting beaten up by husband, the police would say, अरे तू घर का मामला है ना, पति है ना, थोड़ा उसका मार खा लो ना, उसकी बात मान लो ना. They would be careless about it. They would be callous about it. Now, if the police is failing in its job, see, to beat up somebody, to break somebody's bones, is already a crime under Indian Penal Code. Just because the police fails to register a complaint, you pass a special law and you say it must be, and you assume it must be all due to dowry, that all beating is only account of dowry. But there are a lot of dowryless weddings also where this happens. And the law was made more stringent, and mere allegation, a woman reporting dowry demand was made into a crime, a cognizable offense, and the police was piche. Yeah. Now, I'm sure you will agree with me. If you want a good law, one of the first things the law must do is to define the crime accurately. Would you agree? कोई ऐसा कानून है अगर जिसमें मर्डर, सुसाइड और डेथ बाय एक्सीडेंट तीनों की एक ही सजा है, तो आप क्या बोलोगे? पागल कानून है, राइट? डेथ बाय एक्सीडेंट इज वन काइंड ऑफ डेथ, suicide is another kind of death, and murder is very different kind of death. As a young bride, she should be locked up. By this definition, no gifts, no friends can give gifts, nobody should have any exchange. Nowhere in the world, any marriage ever has taken place where gifts are not exchanged. Would you agree? Whether it's America, Europe, anywhere. Weddings are a time when everybody brings in gifts, parents give gifts, everybody gives gifts to each other, all relatives. Now, next. So dowry is banned, but imprisonment for not less than 5 years with a fine not less than 15,000 or the amount of value of such dowry, whichever is more. As per law, both givers and takers are committing a crime, right? The law says giving and taking of dowry is a crime. But in reality, have you ever seen the girl's side sent to jail? Have you ever seen? No. Only the groom's side are caught, if at all, a complaint is registered. So dowry receivers become guilty, not the givers, which is rather strange. Next. Now, dowry is forbidden, but gifts are allowed. How very nice is that? Now, how do you tell? It says, presents to the bride are allowed without any demand having been made, provided that such presents are entered in a list maintained in accordance with the rules as defined under Anti-Dowry Act. Then, presents to the groom are also allowed, provided no demand has been made, and they are entered in a list provided, again, the gifts are of customary nature, and their value is not excessive in relation to financial status of person. Now, have you ever seen any wedding in which the girl's family will put a tag, refrigerator, gift, air conditioner, demand? ऐसा होता है? Does it ever happen like that? Secondly, when you say presents to the groom are also allowed, provided they are customary. My friends, custom by nature changes. In my grandmother's time, it was customary to give cows and buffaloes as part of Stridhan, not dowry, Stridhan. And Stridhan and dowry are very different. Today, if I were to give cows and buffaloes to my daughter, the municipality will take them away immediately and fine them also. So by my mother's time, from cows and buffaloes, it became motorcycle. By the time if I ever had to decide to get married, Maruti 800. And today if you give Maruti 800, that will be seen such a disgrace because Toyota. What I'm saying is, what you give. In my grandmother's time, they used to give those big, beautiful brass utensils, right? By the time of my mother, British dinner set, which lost value. And now it's getting fancier and, different. The point I'm trying to make is this. Customs keep changing. So what is customary in one community may be different from customary in another community. What was customary 50 years ago can change. So how do you then implement this law and take it seriously? What actually happens, you want me to wind up fast? I will. Yeah, quickly. I'll just wind up with this. Next, please, quickly. Just what happens next? Just let's go further. I just wanted to emphasize that traditionally we used to have Stridhan. Stridhan was very different because nobody could take away Stridhan. In dowry, they even calculate flower decoration. We spent so much money on gulab jamun, on ice cream. All that is also counted as dowry, very stupidly enough. Next, please. Now, the fact is, dowry hasn't disappeared. And in Andhra, I can bet that the highest dowries are given to IS officers. Am I right? Then IPS, then income tax. Those jobs where you get biggest bribes get biggest dowries, right? Next. Now, at the time of marriage, everybody says, whatever we are giving, our daughter, how can we send her empty-handed? It's our voluntary gifts. The moment a marriage breaks down, the same voluntary gift becomes dowry demand. Then the case is registered. Otherwise, at the time of wedding, nobody says we are giving because it was demanded. They always pretend. Next, please. Dowry return. Next. And what is worst about this law is that this, along with 498A, Section 498A, which is meant to prevent cruelty to wives, the burden of proof is on the accused. In murder cases also, the person who is accused is assumed innocent till proven guilty. In dowry and cruelty cases, domestic cruelty cases, and dowry is considered a cruelty, the person on whom the accusation is made is assumed guilty till proven innocent. And people go to jail even before trial has become, because 498A, along with Dowry Act, when applied, can send whole families, 15, 20 members of a family, including young girls and 85-year-old women, or a sister-in-law living in California, all of them can end up in jail on the charge of, on mere allegation. And the Supreme Court has called it legal terrorism. There have been many high court judgments next against it, very quickly. And this abuse and misuse of dowry law has become so rampant, as I said, next please, that there have been, even the Supreme Court, mine was the lone voice when this law was passed. I wrote an article saying it's bound to be misused. Now even high courts and Supreme Courts are saying, and I will wind up this part of the story. I have many more laws to analyze, but I don't want to waste more of your time. But very quickly, to show you how badly this law can be used and abused. This young woman, Nisha Sharma, next please, just put the whole slide very quickly. In 2004, Nisha Sharma became a national heroine. She was all over national television. Big chapters were written about her in school textbooks. She was celebrated by the National Commission of Women. And what was the great thing this Lakshmi Jhansi Ki Rani did? What she did was, on the day of her wedding, she called the police saying that her in-laws had demanded 12 lakh more from dowry. Next slide. They admitted, she and her family admitted, that they had already put together 18 lakh rupees by way of dowry items, but the quarrel took place over 12 lakh rupees, and there were suddenly TV cameras also came, and the Dalal family that she was going to marry were put behind bars. The Manish Dalal, his mother and his aunt, all were sent to jail. His mother was a school teacher, government school teacher, and she lost her job. They spent years in jail. Then they spent years fighting cases. Now they were admitting 18 lakhs we gave. Now 12 lakhs is the jhagda. The other side of the family kept saying, the boy's side kept saying, the fight was not over dowry. It's because she had a secret marriage with someone. That boyfriend came and he disrupted the wedding. In order to get rid of her embarrassment, she got us falsely charged. Nobody in the media listened. Nisha Sharma was all over TV channels for 2 months, CNN, BBC, all international newspapers and TV. Next, please, Now, you can see Women's Commission celebrating her. There are chapters in school textbooks on her bravery. In 2012, court acquitted the Dalal family, saying they were right, that she got them falsely implicated, that she actually had a secret marriage, which she had hidden, and she just put the blame on this family because she wanted to hide embarrassment. The fact is, from 2004 to 12, this family suffered so much ignominy. No compensation, nothing. For the family, which was humiliated and treated like criminals by the whole media. Nobody in the media even asked their forgiveness, or no court gave them any recompense. Next, quickly. So the point that I'm trying to make is, next, please. Next. I want to end it. The last 2 slides are, can we abolish dowry if inheritance rights are not given? If daughter wants to take dowry and parents want to give, it can't be stopped. Can it be stopped? No. It will go under the table. Secondly, what is the real problem? Real problem is not that parents give gifts at the time of wedding. Problem arises if the wife is beaten up and demands are made. How can you call that dowry? That should be extortionist demand. That should be called blackmail. That should be called extortion and tried under Indian Penal Code. In short, we don't really need a new dowry law when dowry can't be stopped, or giving to daughters, gifts can't be stopped. How much who gives at the time of wedding can't be stopped. But you can stop people from beating up their wives and demanding money, but that should not be called dowry demand. It should be called extortion. It should be called blackmail and tried under those laws instead of making a joke of a dowry law. Next, and I'll end up, inheritance rights is the issue to me. Give to daughters, don't send them empty-handed. You must give generously to daughters. Only, I think what we really need is give to daughters income generating forms of property. Instead of giving them sofa set, instead of giving them dinner sets, expensive things, spending 20 lakhs on the wedding reception, give them a asset, a house, shares, a piece of land, so they do not go to the husband's house as dependents. To me, that is the real problem. I don't have time to go over the rape law, which I have challenged in court through a PIL, but I want to end up by saying that we as a society have committed a big blunder by handing over the job of getting new laws passed for us to NGOs and foreign-funded NGOs. We are never even consulted as a society. It is time that we took charge, and laws must be crafted carefully and used as careful doses of antibiotics, very carefully, very targeted, with surgical precision. Laws must be crafted with surgical precision, and for them to work, you need an honest police and you need honest judiciary which functions well. Otherwise, let us not keep asking for more and more draconian laws, stringent punishments, because the laws are then misused by the police, by corrupt lawyers, by corrupt judges, and by corrupt women also, to implicate falsely innocent families. Thank you.